course, we don't, we're not talking here next. Also, I immediately when I read this, I saw that section 7, where it said that this is something.
And him and her can switch wheels.
Yeah,
I didn't think that that was the case, but I just wanted to
Well,
make sure.
yeah.
I don't know how I managed to
If
send
one
that out
wasn't
to you.
actually
because
BLS.
I was in our system.
Then
The version that I had
she-
saved later.
and then add-
is the one that I emailed later on.
Yeah, but I know, but if it's an extra
The
BLS
version that
call,
saved the right one.
she
But
can
anyway,
make
of course,
that.
if
And Adam
that
did
was
that.
necessary, because it's not like you would do it. That's a long involved thing.
Yeah, but I mean, you put BLS on. So what I'm saying is, if it ends up being, that it's an actual BLS call.
So we're on everybody right.
Yeah.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No, that's just law.
Everybody heard that, all right, so we forgot to bring the agenda. Good thing you got a computer. And
First thing is public comment.
first thing's public comment. So we got any public comment?
Department head report.
We have an EMS agreement with Marna Hopkins. It's an 8 thing. Ready to be approved. Everything's sorted out with it?
Yep, they agreed. Knows everything we asked for.
Okay. So do we need a motion on that?
Yes.
Okay. So we need a motion to approve the EMS agreement with Marna Hopkins.
To be clear, this is the agreement where we act as preceptors to train EMS students who will receive whatever certifications they need or not.
Sure, I'll make a motion, we accept that agreement for Arna Hopkins.
I'll second.
Okay? Any discussion on that? Let's keep question.
Yes, since I'm not privy to it, I just want to make sure that Robin is okay with it, and hopefully you will see it, they're okay with it, and the attorney.
Robin, you're good with it?
Okay.
We also have to work with boards as well.
Okay, correct. Okay, so we'll take a vote on that. Fran?
Yes.
Charles?
Yes.
Rusty?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And yes. Okay. Normally I cross these things off. Do we want to go over the health consortium? It's probably the longest topic. So,
Is anybody available to talk about it?
not really besides me. So I passed out, which I can email you. I'll actually email it to you now. There's a 6-page document that compares, I'll call it our current plan to the proposed new plan. I mean, like everything you would get, like from your employer as far as like child visits, and how they're covered, our plan versus the proposed plan.
I thought the plan didn't change, right? It was just a little bit of money, right?
So it's still, it's an Excellus Blue Cross Blue Shield Gold plan, but there apparently are different gold plans. So it's the same, but very slightly different.
Okay.
You had your responsibility for the managers working with you?
No, we don't have much for the employees. A lot of that is because, so the way the village benefits work are the employee pays a certain percentage of the premium, 20%. And the village kicks in into their health savings account, the out-of-pocket maximum. So employees always have the amount of money in their health savings account to pay the bill. Right, so like if something's covered at 60% instead of 70%, they would still have the money in their account to pay the bill. They really wouldn't see any difference. And it's the same Blue Cross, so it's the same network of doctors and all that. We've had it for a long time.
I'd be curious to hear from any employees whether they would like to proceed or not proceed. I mean, it'd be nice to have some kind of input from them.
I think Rod, right, which union are you going to?
CSE. And therefore, the police department wants to defer until they want to make a part of it.
Yeah, we need to, so this is the negotiation here for both unions, but neither union really had a beef with it, I guess I'll say.
Right, but the police didn't accept it like the CSEAs didn't see it too.
Do we have that from the CSA? I know certain members of the CSA are in favor. Do we have that from the union itself, or who do we have that from? I don't understand.
It would be from, so our union leader for the CSEA is Mike Howe. Mike Howe is our representative.
He said they didn't have one. And I don't have it writing here. All I know is when you have to do this by the date.
So we have to either pass or not pass this resolution to join the consortium in August. If we don't do it tonight, then we'll have to have, if we want to do it, let's have another special meeting.
This is the August deadline because I'm assuming the self-insurance plan is going to be establishing its participation rates for the next year. So they need to know if you're in it or not. They're probably going to need a finalized number of employees who are in it or not.
Yeah, there's a whole process.
So likely the police union, even if you authorize it tonight, the police union wouldn't be able to participate until next year. But it sounds like the CSA has already agreed to it, so if you approved it tonight, you should get the savings from the CSA. And that's where most money is saved anyway, because there's many more CSA employees where you utilize the health insurance.
CSA is all for it. I'm saying, yeah, hopefully it's going to save us a lot of money. If they're happy with it, I don't know.
Well, the way it works is it's a consortium, so they have to accept us into their plan, basically, because it's a self-insured type thing. So they have to.
Well, aren't there several steps, don't they have to look at our,
Yes. That doesn't
what
mean,
our costs have been and.
so that we pass the resolution doesn't mean we're in. It means
Right.
we're committed to going in as long as they approve us.
But if it turns out that we're not happy with them, we can still turn them down, right? We can always go back to buying our own insurance.
It's kind of like a letter of intent.
Yeah, I think we should try it.
Well,
I want to talk a little more about what Fran just said.
Yes,
So
that's
let's
what
go
I read, they don't accept us till like November or something.
right.
If they don't accept us, I get that. But I don't know what the rules are about if we change our mind. So we join, how long do we join for, how long we are obligated for, when can we change our mind, when we can go and do something else? That's kind of what she was asking.
Yeah.
And that's always a piece of information to know.
Did everybody get the resolution? I don't know if it's in the resolution or not. Did you see the resolution?
Good. Yes, I want to see that.
Thought somebody sent it around.
She might have said it. I just assume.
She sent it out last week.
Yeah, I don't either. It's just basically applying to the program.
Well, I don't see a time frame in here whatsoever. It can't be illegal to believe it's an annual
the first of the year.
I would assume that if you enter it, you would have to enter it for 1 year. That would be my guess.
Yes.
You know, and the reason being, they set their rates based on how many municipalities are participating. We would probably have to give them, I'm sure, the agreement that they're signing requires notice to them of your intent to cancel the agreement for some certain period of time before their next review process.
And this isn't the agreement, this is just a resolution saying that we want in, basically.
I'm assuming there's gonna be an open
It's a
enrollment
year.
every year or something of the sort.
Yeah.
It seems to be the norm with insurance. In the worst case scenario, hopefully they'll only tie it for a year, they're signing a like, and we can just okay with the money, we'll keep going with it.
Right.
Insurance is definitely a hot commodity nowadays.
I know, so I sat through the presentation that they gave to council of government, and they lost very few people that have joined it as far as getting out of it. It's because their rates are always pretty low.
I'm gonna assume that more municipalities join over the years, the rates will hypothetically lower.
Right.
Potentially, not necessarily.
Hypothetically. Pretty educated guesses.
I called up Cindy's office today, and I spoke with Cindy and asked her questions about it, so I'm comfortable with it being a good decision for all the employees, like they get to keep everything that they currently have, and nothing really changes with their money and coverage, and we save money, so I'm comfortable with moving to go forward with the resolution to ask to join the consortium.
I mean, there's only one, I'll call it major change, but it's not, our numbers are here actually. I think those are.
Their coverage is basically just 85%, theirs is 80%.
It's not those. So there's our current plan, I'll call it 3 different flavors. There's a single plan, there's an employee plus spouse, an employee plus children, and then a family plan. With this new plan, there's a single plan and a family plan. So it'll affect, and you can see the numbers there, there's 8 people that would essentially bump up the premium a little bit. That's probably the biggest change from an employee standpoint.
This comparison,
Yeah.
so, the family plan is substantially less.
Actually, I mean, you can see the numbers of the family plan
Substantially less.
is almost the price of the employee plus spouse plan. I mean,
The only one that costs more money is employee plus children, and that's a couple $100 more. But the family plan would be the most popular, and that's good, that's $500 or more or less.
It seems a lot of insurances are going that way.
Yeah. That's how they try and keep the cost down too.
So I'm looking at, on the resolution 8, it says, submit payment by November 1st to the consortium of the corporation's proportionate share of the surplus amount reserved, 5% of annualized premium. Is that a significant amount of money or a problem or something we do now or don't do now?
I know Cindy looked at that, so I assume it's all stuff we do now anyway. It's 5% of our take.
Above?
Of our
5% of our premium? Okay. I don't know how much is there.
I assume that's how we pay it now.
That premium would be a lot. Okay.
She didn't freak out at that anyway.
That didn't seem like I'm just trying to find out, is that $100,000, $200,000, $20,000?
I know it's a chunk.
Yeah.
I don't do the payroll, so I don't know how she pays the health insurance right now. I assume it's
Probably not a week.
There's a motion.
Yeah, I'm not gonna ask a bunch of questions, but I have lots of questions. I'm probably not going to vote for this. I probably am in favor of it, but I'm probably not going to vote for it because of, I don't know squat about it.
Understand.
Not trying to encourage anyone else to do the same. Right.
In this motion, we can put CSE.
I wouldn't.
We kind of can't put the police in it.
Well,
It's gonna be whoever.
Yeah,
So it's whether we put in,
it's just authorizing to the consortium, and they'll start the review, and then by November, or whatever date it is, you have to tell them which of your employees are going to participate. So, you know,
Well, that's good then.
put on the second.
Okay. No, not yet.
Okay, we got a motion, seconds.
Yeah, nothing's firm until November.
Right. There, so let's vote on that. Brian?
Yes.
Charles? Yes. Rusty?
Abstain.
Ron?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And yes. Associate Justice. Everybody get the local laws that they drafted up. I will, for the public, I'll put these on the website. The next step is to
public hearing,
public hearing.
next meeting, I don't remember.
Did we didn't schedule it?
And tonight, we just setting public hearings for the first meeting in September.
So everybody got the drafts, right? And these are just a review. We'll have a public hearing. If you have any changes before then, let us know. You know,
Can we set that public hearing?
local laws, only 3 pages total, so.
Can we set that public hearing and still possibly have a couple of tweaks of this before that?
Depends on what the tweaks are. You know, substantive, if they're not truly substantive, if they're typographical or grammatical, or if we identify another, like the point of one local law is just changing the title. And I think I managed to list all the areas in the charter where the phrase police justice and acting police justice are used. If you identify another one, I'm fine with adding that to it because the substance of the law is still the same. But we couldn't do any major language changes like if you wanted, like kind of we were talking about, if you wanted to have another change unrelated to the title change, then that would need to be a separate.
And the changes we're making for eliminations and stuff.
Yeah, well, the change is about the compensation, which were the main, which is the point of the second one.
I forgot one that we need to do. In the first sentence of
What are you
C20,
looking at, law one or two?
C21, let me look at the law paper.
What is the change that you're looking
The change is, in C3, all of our appointments are for all officers are made by the village board. In C21, it says that the justice will be appointed by the mayor. And so, those are in conflict, and since all our officers are appointed by the board, I think we should take that phrase out. And then, because C1 already says that the officers will all be appointed by the
Well, I think because the local law number 2 is about changing the method of compensation for the acting police justice, what you're talking about is really a different topic of discussion than changing his method of compensation. You're talking about changing how he's appointed. And actually, I think changing how he's appointed might be subject to a referendum.
Well, I'm not talking about changing how he's appointed. I'm talking about, we have a conflict in 2 different chapters about how he's appointed.
I think that's still changing,
Okay.
you know, because the mayor right now has the authority to do that by taking that authority from the mayor and giving it to the village board. That changes the mayor's power and authority, which would make it subject, I think, to a referendum.
Section C3 says the mayor does not have that authority. It says the village board has that.
Well, so that's,
I'm just saying.
yeah, I think the thing is that the later section, I think, is more specific. Usually the more specific section of the law governs over a general statement. So if the general statement of the law is the village board will appoint officers. And then there's a later section of law, which you're talking about here, that conflicts with that, but it's also very specific. It's the mayor shall appoint the acting police justice. Usually specific sections of the law take precedent over general ones, so it might appear like there's a conflict, but you would read them together in the best way possible and find that the mayor has that power and authority. That's why if you change it from mayor to the village board, that would be taking power from the mayor, which would make it subject to hearing.
Okay, well, you're saying the mayor can appoint the acting justice, right? But the board appoints the justice.
No, he's
He's
elected.
elected. The acting justice is like a backup.
But anyway, let's see, it's a different,
Yeah,
it's a different
The
vote
board votes in
than
that
the
acting
two that we're
justice.
talking about primarily.
Not in the code now. The justices, the acting justices is appointed.
It's a one-year term.
But the board doesn't vote on, currently the board would vote on the acting justice. If it's just the mayor appoints.
I mean, I'm not quite familiar with that specific English. Exactly what it says. How we've been doing it, I'm sure is likely to do it.
Yeah, it's in the annual meeting.
Once again, I'm just, out the contradiction, trying to clean it up.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, that's a fine topic to discuss. It's just that I don't believe it would be included in either of the two local laws that we have currently.
Okay.
So we can schedule a public hearing on these two local laws, local law number 1 and local law number 2.
I move that we schedule a public hearing on the first meeting in September, which I think is September 3rd at,
It's Tuesday, instead of Monday.
September 7th, that's what I said, September 7th.
Actually, over there.
So it's September 8th. I said September 8th, Tuesday, the first meeting in September.
It's gonna be the 8th.
That we set, schedule a public hearing for 7 PM. Is that the right time?
It's the right time.
To, for local law number 1 and local law number 2.
Let's second that.
Those are about changing the title of police justice, village justice, and related matters. And number 2 is a local law amending the village associate justice method of compensation. Post this to the website. It's there to
Who seconded that?
run.
You see the finger? Right up.
Yeah. Put the finger right up.
Somewhere.
There. So, any discussion on that? We're here, we're good. Frank?
Yes.
Charles?
Yes.
Rusty? Yes. Rob?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And yes. Back to the agenda. Increase OPE's daycare to $200. Anybody know that?
But they keep running out of petty cash. So they raise them Any motion with it?
Did they usually say that too?
Yeah. Well, they do, because they use it sometimes for batteries, or anything that they need. It's mostly insulin.
So how much is it now?
I think it's only $100.
100?
They want to raise it to 200.
To 200.
I think we can afford it.
I motion to raise the, increase the OPE's petty cash amount to $200.
I second that.
Charles will second that. I thought it was supposed to be taxes.
Yeah.
That's why it's $100 bill, there's no change in the laws.
Well, no change right there. Points, that's the problem. All right, anybody got any comment on that? Frank?
Yes.
Charles? Rusty?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And yes.
Motion is success.
So we'll do department head reports next. Everything else.
Just a question, those public hearings, we didn't vote on that, do we need
everybody got a chance to look over that bid proposal that was sent out for the recast.
Got it last
We
weekend.
got last week,
Yeah,
Right.
the RFP.
yes. So I'm just asking that we can go to the next step as soon as we can on that one. So this month, as of date, we've done 70 calls so far. Tuesday, the 25th, we've been asked to participate in the filming of a public service announcement to encourage volunteers and enrollment in different agencies. So we decided we're gonna pick the cream of the crop, basically going from age to oldest to youngest kind of a deal, to show that any age is a good thing for volunteering. So we'll be sending an ambulance and a fly car with a total of 7 people representing that. Some people will be asked to speak. It's a filming, they're gonna be filming it. Supposedly it's gonna be in Binghamton. We'll know Monday exactly where they're gonna be going to, because they have to get the site. And at this point, there's only a few agencies that even offer to do it, so I figured it was good that we represent Tioga County, at least.
It's great.
Jeff was gonna be one of them and his wife. Also, our worst thoughts did come true. 3-2's transmission is acting up. So after that event, they're going to be taking 3-2 back down to Simmons Rockwell to have them check the transmission. That's the one we just had the motor put in.
So what's happening is the clutch fan is staying on, so it's revving up real loud, and then it's not shifting from second to third gear until almost 75 miles an hour or 4,000 RPMs.
No. So when they get back from the event, they'll be taking that down to find out what's going on back here pretty quick.
So that's not anything in addition we'll need to pay for, right? That try to follow up.
That has nothing to do with the motor, and that's what I explained to everybody before, that, you know, you can put this money into the motor, but we don't know what the transmission looks like in there. And of course, sadly enough, if they have to work on the transmission, guess what they got? They got, it's just it's a gambling that you do. That's all. You don't know when anything's gonna go and anything, so that will be taken, and as soon as we know what's going on, you will know.
I assume we're not driving much hopefully?
It's second, and we've had it. We had it first due until things started acting funky, and then we moved it to second. So.
Yeah. Good plan.
But as long as you're not going 75 miles an hour, you should, it's gonna be, it's that catch between where it's still,
Even 50 and 60 and 70 years.
yeah, I know. So that's why I think this is well, if it ends up being 2 calls on top of each other, the BOS call would take 3-2 as opposed to the other one, because if it's a potential hot call, you want one that's not gonna blow up in the process, so. Well,
Maybe it is.
it is what it is. All I can-
Alright. So they did a nice little write-up on Sonia, it's on the Hawk or something like that?
Yeah, her sister nominated her for that,
That
so.
was pretty cool. Anything else? Good.
Well, I propose that we move ahead on the recasting third ambulance.
We've had a lot of bids on Zoom.
We haven't put out the bid yet. So we have the RFP.
No, it's a competitive bid
Competitive bid, okay.
package specifications for the ambulance that the ambulance specs the province will put on. I mean, this is this visual that you're gonna get. It's pretty specific about the stuff that goes in it, and that's where when you look at it, if you don't want and I have no idea what the heck's what's actually in there, but if you were like, why are we doing these lights? Like, if you happen to know anything about lights, you might say, why don't we do a different type of lights, or why do we need 6 cup holders? Why do we need any cup holders at all? I mean, that's the type of thing. There's no reason to have cup holders. That's the type of thing that you could say in those bid specs, like what you don't want. If there's a piece of equipment in there that you're like, we don't really need that, then you can take it out, or if you think something else should be in there, you put it in. That's where reviewing it, understanding what it is that you're actually looking at, and I'd say if you have any questions about whether any of those things are needed, talk with Robin as to why it's been included. That way you have a sense of what it is the vehicle will actually be.
So we got a last meeting, it's like 30 pages of very specific ambulance stuff.
Well, basically what you're looking at with any of the electronic part of it, to try and clear it up for you a little bit, is a lot of the things now that we are getting, such as light bags, heated IV bags, all these things require plugs and outlets. The old boxes don't have the correct outlets and things for that. So those were placed into the spots because now we're like buying a cigarette lighter that's got 2 or 3 prongs in it, and you're trying to connect to whatever. It's more now so that it's designed for efficiency as well as necessity. And accessibility even. Because some of our stuff is actually locked in the cabinet behind this, that, and another thing at this point to try to keep the equipment charged or whatnot. And as for lights and things such as that, you have to think of what we can afford to replace. We didn't go for the high end because if something goes, we have to come up with the money to try and replace these lights. Which one is the most easily gotten again and is the cheapest to replace? And what's the longevity of those items? These are the things that we went through before we put together the lists and the description, so that hopefully it was made clear enough that that's what these things were. Wanting a lift for the oxygen tank, we're not young, and those big oxygen tanks weigh, not the little ones, the big ones, having to hoof them up, as you know, and put it into the ambulance. You gotta be thinking about your staff, your people. This is one that actually comes out, the lift thing comes out, sits on the ground, slide it back into it. Hey, if it saves my back, I'm happy. I mean, let's think about it. Our drivers, they're all retired, they're all elderly. We don't need a compensation case. So those were the things we were looking at,
No, I'm not.
People like him. But also we have to take into effect the weight. Everything that's weight-wise is on the driver's side. So it's going to look like it's doing this after a while because it's compensated for that. But everything, if you think about it, all the equipment's on that one side. So these are things we have to take into account: weight, usefulness, accessibility, replaceability. So if there is anything, just let me know.
So the next step in that process would be to send out the bid.
Yeah, do a publication notice, that the village is seeking bids on the purchase of an ambulance, contact the village clerk's office, who's interested in the specs. I don't remember what we talked about for the time frame for responses to be due. You have to do a minimum of 5. I mean, as long as it's 5, good. Usually
5 days, you mean?
5 days, yeah. Usually 2 weeks or 30 days is pretty standard for going out to bid for purchases.
Now, should we have all the finances arranged prior? We really can't get the bids, right?
It depends on how you're planning on paying for it, and until you know how much things are going to cost, you don't really know how much you need to borrow. For example, if you're going to borrow, same thing with the lease purchase financing. So depending on how you're planning on doing it, once we get the bids back, we can go out and do a bond resolution. I mean, if you can tell me today that Robin might say, you know, it's probably gonna be, for what we're talking about, no more than $130,000. She can't imagine it would be any higher than that, because she's probably already gotten, well, we know we've gotten a quote, and we would expect it to be something around there. So you authorize a bond resolution to go a little higher than that, to give you some extra wiggle room, and so we could go do that. It just depends on how you want to do it.
Mike, can I just say something? I would just, whatever we are going to do with that ambulance and whatever we're going to do as far as the process here, I would urge the board as a ambulance corps personnel, but also as a taxpayer, to move forward as soon as possible, because there's a time limit on this chassis that supposedly we're interested in, which is September 15th, and if we don't do anything by then, we're